So this week I went on a 3-day retreat with the Academy Junior High and High School. And for those of you who are not familiar with Mercy Ships or haven't been to the ship before, we actually have an academy for the students here aboard. It's the school I grew up in and graduated from, and so I'm not biased at all, but it's the best school ever, pretty much, that's a fact. So if you're a kid, you should come, it's great. So I'm hoping to do a vlog in the next couple weeks or so where I show you around the academy, introduce you to some of the teachers, and hopefully you can also hear from some of the students just about what it's like to go to school on a ship in Africa. So you can look for that in the near future, hopefully. But for now, I just wanted to share a little bit about what a retreat was like. I went as the speaker, and we talked a lot about what it means to use your time well and to follow the call of God on your life. So yeah, hopefully this uses the next few minutes of your time well, and welcome to Kribi. We're going to Kribi! In the academy we have about 48, 50 kids. Yes, this is one of them. And I didn't tell him to do that. They didn't tell me what's it like to be an academy student.
It's a real, to be an academy student is really fun. I think the education is really nice, but this is just awkward. Come on, Luke.
So during the retreat, we talked a lot about the story of Samuel. So, a little context for the story. Samuel lived during a time when the tabernacle was set up in Shiloh. It had been about 400 years since Moses had received the initial instructions for what the tabernacle was supposed to look like, and the Israelites would come to Shiloh every year to offer sacrifices and to meet with God, because this is where the high priest was. This is where the priests were, this is where the sacrifices were being made, and where God's presence was dwelling in the Ark of the Covenant, which was inside the tabernacle. And so in this story, Samuel, who's about 12 years old or so, is living in the tabernacle, and it says he's ministering before the Lord. And it also says that in those days the word of the Lord was rare, and that there were not very many visions. And we also know that Eli's 2 sons were wicked, and they were doing terrible things in the tabernacle that shouldn't have been done. And they were even stealing sacrifices from people who would bring their meat to offer to God, but before they even had a chance to offer it up to God, they would come in and say, hey, that's for the priest to eat, so hand it over. So things were not looking so good at that time. And yet here you have a little boy, a little 12-year-old boy perhaps, who remains pure, remains strong, and is ministering before the Lord day after day after day.
I heard there were some giant starfish here in Cameroon.
Really? Like, how big are we talking about? Oh my God!
It's so huge!
Oh, that was fun. See ya.
Guys, excuse me. Hello?
And so, as the story goes, we know that one night, while everyone is sleeping, Samuel is laying down near the Ark of the Covenant. That's apparently where he sleeps. And he hears a voice that says, Samuel. And he wakes up and immediately runs to Eli and says, here I am, you called. And Eli says, no, I didn't. Go back to bed, basically. And so he does. And then again, he hears the same voice, Samuel. And he leaps up again and runs to Eli, here I am, you called me. And by this point, you can imagine Eli's getting a little frustrated. Like, no, Samuel, I didn't call you. Go back to bed and let me sleep. I'm an old man. So he does. He goes back to bed. And then the third time, the voice calls Samuel. And Samuel gets up again. He is just persistent. And he goes to Eli. "Here I am, you called me." And this is when Eli realizes that something is going on here. This isn't your usual nightly annoyance or interruption, but this is the voice of God. So the story continues, and Eli tells Samuel what to say to God, and Samuel obeys, and this turns into a call in his life, and he becomes a great prophet. And yet when reading it, sometimes it can feel hard to enter into it. It's like, oh, it's all good for him. I mean, he was a chosen prophet by God. I almost imagine God's voice just booming down to Samuel. It's like he didn't even have a choice. He just got called, and he got up, and he went, and it's just that easy. And yet we know that God's voice fell on Samuel. It seemed to pass over Eli, the high priest of God who was sleeping not very far off. God's voice came to Samuel. So why him? Why him? Looking back on Samuel's life before God's call and how he spent his time, we notice a few things about him. So we know that Samuel is serving in the tabernacle. He's ministering before the Lord in the face of all evil and wickedness that's happening. He's consistently serving. And we know that he bends towards service because his immediate response to a voice he doesn't know is to leap out of his warm bed and run to Eli. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I don't know about you, but after the 3rd time, I would have been like, all right, Eli is going crazy, and I'm just going to stay in my nice warm bed.
Rest in peace.
So yeah, I came to the ship to, hang out with these guys, and this is how they repay me. Yeah, it's fine.
She's very dear to us, and we're burying her alive.
Today,
Today
I want to talk to you about using your time well, which is what we have done today. So we're going to turn into the book of 1 Samuel 3. Oh wait, I don't have any hands. Okay, we won't be turning to the book of 1 Samuel 3. That's what we've been talking about in the retreat, is young Samuel in the tabernacle.
Young, very small. Petite.
What's also interesting about this story is that in the middle of it, the author is very clear to add this one verse that says, "Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him." So here's this boy who doesn't know God, and yet is living a very godly life. And what's more, we know that he even sleeps near the Ark of the Covenant. He wants to be as close to God's presence as he possibly can, as close to a God who he doesn't yet know. But he knows he wants to be close. And so that's how he spends his time, serving and helping Eli, and sitting in the presence of God and sleeping in the presence of God, and remaining pure, even though he so could have easily justified wrong behavior. I mean, the priests themselves are wicked, are doing terrible things, and Samuel's a boy. He could have followed what they were doing and been like, hey, they're doing it, so why can't I? But no, he doesn't. Somehow he knows to stand strong and to stand for what's right. So I suppose it could be said that, Samuel was just chosen by God, and that's that, and his voice came, and Samuel had no choice but to get up and follow. Or was it that the way that Samuel spent his life, the things he did when no one was watching, could those habits, those disciplines, that lifestyle be the very thing that gave Samuel the ears to hear God's call? We can spend a lot of time in our life waiting for the perfect opportunity, can't we? You know, it's like, well, once I get to high school, I'll have the friends and the fun I always wanted. Or, okay, that didn't work out once I get to college. Or, okay, once I leave college. Or, I'll start really living into the person I want to be once I have the skill set I want, or once I get the dream job. Or I'll start giving back once I am more secure and have a little bit of extra on the side. Or I'll be happy once I get married, or once I have a family, or once I've traveled the world, or when all these things happen, then just wait. I'm gonna do amazing things, and I'm gonna be who I always wanted to be. But not yet. Not yet. One day, but not yet. But we have a God who does not live in just the past or the future. He lives right now, and he wants us to live right now too. Samuel's life and his call didn't begin when God said Samuel. It began from the moment he was born. It began in the little things and how he spent his days in the tabernacle. It began in a story that we don't even know much about, but we know he was serving. We know he was there, and we know that when God's voice called him, he heard it, and he responded. I don't want to be someone who just waits for these grand, huge opportunities, for that booming, loud, voice from heaven experience. I want to live now. There's always going to be a slew of excuses that could keep us from living now. But let's learn from Samuel. Even when he didn't understand, and even when the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him, where do we find him? We find him in the tabernacle, as close to God as he can get. So let's use our time well. And it doesn't have to look like being a little 12-year-old priest assistant helping the tabernacle. No, it might look like learning new skills, instruments, art, creating things, making things, reading the books you always wanted to read, having the conversations you always wanted to have, making new friends, reaching out to those who need help, bending in compassion toward the outcasts, and in living our own lives well and using our time well, we remind others who may have forgotten that their lives are precious and valuable and noticed. In using our time well in the little things, we're preparing ourselves for the big things. Because what we do now is not severed from who we are later. It's all connected. From the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. What we fill our mind with now and our heart with now is what will come out later.
There, she's doing it. She's doing it.
And so may we live into those habits, leaning as close as we can to God in everything we do, so that when our call comes, and when our time comes, we have the ears to hear. And then our response will be to leap out of our bed and say, "Here I am. You called."